Peace, and love, brothers, family, sisters. One thing I want to talk about this evening is I come across many brothers from other houses of consciousness, and I, for one, come from other houses of consciousness. My first school of thought is the Nation of Gods and Earths, as well as the Nation of Islam, and but I come across many brothers from the Nation of God and Earth, from the Nation of Islam, or from the Hebrew Israelite community, as well as those brothers that are from the Afrocentric community. And, I know and understand the lessons that come from these communities. I've studied them in great detail. And I don't have anything against those lessons. Never. I stand for unity for our people. But many times there will be individuals who come from these schools of thought who will have something negative to say against the Moors, and one of those main things that they will say is that the Moors are the ones that are responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. And you see that sailboat sitting in the back. That sailboat is not a slave ship. For one, you need to keep in mind that the Moors are the ones who navigated and circumnavigated the earth prior to any European. We taught them how to do it. We created and invented sailboats and slave ships. We had slave ships way before they did. This is where your history lacks at when you make these statements and you make these claims. When you make these claims, you need to be precise in your information and not limited in your information, because I don't claim that I have all of the answers. But certain things that are presented to me in an argument fashion are limited. Meaning that the information that you've been studying, that you have been taught, is limited. And I'm not taking anything away from your leader or your instructor, because I know and understand the degrees that your instructor got and gave to you. Because when you, for example, I'll give this to you. When you're talking about the Nation of Islam or the Nation of God and Earth, you're talking about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he received the degrees of information from who? Master Fard Muhammad. Right? Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in his own words, he has a book called Secrets of Freemasonry. In his own words, he tells you that I'm not going to go into the history of the Freemasons because I took an oath. And then he also says, I have a few more degrees. So now, respectfully, to my brothers from the Nation of God and Earth and from my brothers from the Nation of Islam, we, Moorish adepts, go into those few degrees. We, as Moorish adepts, because we know and understand and recognize that Elijah Muhammad was Elijah Poole Bey under the Moorish Science Temple of America. For one, Moorish Science Temple of America was established in what? 1928. The Old Canaanite Temple, 1913. Moorish Holy Temple of Science, 1925, officially in 1926. This is prior to 1934, when Allah's Temple of Islam was established, that later became the Nation of Islam. So when he tells you that I have a few more degrees, he's making reference to those few more degrees that we have been given. Don't mean everybody that you see with a fez on is going to have those degrees. Many of them that you will come across don't have them degrees at all. Some of them have them degrees but won't tell you. And the reason why is because Noble Drew Ali's organization has been infiltrated. And it's been infiltrated with people who proceed to demonstrate a church-like, religious-like demonstration, as opposed to the esoteric science as well as the civics and degrees of information that is necessary for you to get back into your rightful place as rulers, as executive rulers on this planet. That position has been compromised by today's modern Moorish Science Temple of America. So I myself, I have a bad taste in my mouth too about the Moorish Science Temple of America, and I'm a Grand Sheik. But I know and understand the history behind it. I know what's been going on. So I know who's who. I know who's been manipulated by COINTELPRO operatives, and I know who's really standing on the true degrees of Noble Drew Ali. That's a whole nother subject. But to get to what I want to speak about tonight is I want to speak about one of the arguments that brothers present to me all the time in regard to the Moors, the ancient Moors. Now, when you're talking about the ancient Moors, many individuals will sit there and try to say that the Moors are the ones that are responsible for the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade we're talking about. Now, let's examine this, because I'm about to tear this shit down. And I want anybody who's watching to do their own research. Always research anything I say. Shake me down. Shake me all the way down. And I want you to shake me down in person. I would love for you to shake me down in person, because I'm well studied, and anything I say I can stand on. I can show you, I can demonstrate it to you, I can prove it to you. So I want you to shake me down. But in the meantime, I want you to do some research on Google, or even go to the Library of Congress and do some research. One or the other. Because this, before Google, this is where we studied from, Moors. We studied from the Library of Congress, which is a library that comes from ancient Moor science. One thing you need to know, you can't keep giving the Europeans credit. We give them too much credit as it is. We give them credit of being the masters of slavery. And when we had people in slavery, we had them in slavery before anything. We taught them how to be slaves, how to initiate servitude, and how to maintain and keep slaves. We taught them that. Number one, you got to get this history right. But if you're looking for yourself anywhere in black history, you're not going to find it, because that was only modernly created by them. So now look, one of the arguments that people often present to me is that the Moors, and I even saw this on Sinetta, is that the Moors are the ones that are responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. So now when you say that, you're saying that the Moors are the ones that are responsible for enslaving black people. This is what they say. Listen to this. The Moors are the ones who are responsible for enslaving black people. Okay, so now we're also saying the slave trade was initiated in the 1400s, let's even just say the 1500s to be extra generous. There was no such thing as black people in the 1400s and 1500s. So you're saying that the Moors were responsible for enslaving black people. Black people weren't created until the 1700s. The Moors were responsible for creating black people, or enslaving black people. That's just one. You got to get this. You got to get this right. You got to understand this. Now, when you say stuff like that, you're saying that the Moors are somebody separate and distinct from the rest of the people of Africa, which is incorrect. Many of our brothers and sisters have been learning from so-called black leaders. And these same so-called black leaders have affairs just like I do, but they wear that fez in secret. Or they on the Masonic square, just like I am, but they do this in secret. And the Masonic square that I'm on is not the one that they're on. They are subject to European oaths and obligations. I'm not. I belong to the ancient free Moorish rite. I'm responsible and obligated to give you your history back. They're responsible and obligated to keep your history away from you by death oath. Keep this in mind. So when you say that the Moors are somebody separate from the rest of the people from Africa, well, what was the nationality of the rest of the people in Africa is my question. Then many of you say, I even heard him say this on Sinetta one time, is that, well, I don't think they had a nationality. Now, once again, you're giving the European too much credit. You're crediting him with being the founder of nations and nationality and the concept of nations, nationality, and government. When it was clearly, historically, if you do any research outside of studying a Dr. Ben book, a John Henry Clark book, when you do some research, some real research in history, you will find that it was the Moors who were the ones who established the governmental principles, even the ones that you see the Europeans using today right here. Barack Obama put his stamp on this as well, right? Don't take my word for it. Look up Barack Obama's speech in Cairo, and he will tell you clearly that the Constitution, as well as the founding of the United States, derived from ancient Moorish Muslim law.
We meet at a time of great tension between the United States and Muslims around the world. Tension rooted in historical forces that go beyond any current policy debate. The relationship between Islam and the West includes centuries of coexistence and cooperation, but also conflict and religious wars. More recently, tension has been fed by colonialism that denied rights and opportunities to many Muslims. As a student of history, I also know civilization's debt to Islam. It was Islam at places like Uluzara that carried the light of learning through so many centuries, paving the way for Europe's Renaissance and Enlightenment. It was innovation in Muslim communities. It was innovation in Muslim communities that developed the order of algebra, our magnetic compass and tools of navigation, our mastery of pens and printing, our understanding of how disease spreads and how it can be healed. Islamic culture has given us majestic arches and soaring spires, timeless poetry and cherished music, elegant calligraphy, and places of peaceful contemplation. And throughout history, Islam has demonstrated through words and deeds the possibilities of religious tolerance and racial equality. I also know that Islam has always been a part of America's story. The first nation to recognize my country was Morocco. In signing the Treaty of Tripoli in 1796, and when the first Muslim American was recently elected to Congress, he took the oath to defend our Constitution using the same Holy Quran that one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, kept in his personal library.
When he was in Cairo trying to ease tension between the Muslims and the rest of the world, due to this alleged terrorism thing, he explained to them in great detail, and I sat there and looked at it and said, well, are they going to shoot him down for going into this? Because we've been talking about this for years. So for him to get on there and say that, it blew my mind. But he went on there and demonstrated how the United States of America body politic derived from ancient Muslim law. We're not talking about Sunnis and Shiites. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the ancient principle of the Egyptian mystery system, which has been demonstrated in the Arabic language under Sufism. See, many of us, we have a bad taste in our mouth about religion, period. And so when we see Allah or Islam or anything like that, we think, oh, Arab, no, I don't want anything to do with that. That's some religion. But when you see this fez on that they try to hide from you, right? They'll give you a kufi. They'll give you any other headdress. But they will literally try to hide this from you. And this is a whole nother argument that people try to present. They try to say that the Turks are the ones that are responsible. The European pale-skinned Turks are the ones responsible for the fez. But I can show you. You go to my website. I'll show you again. I can show you on Easter Island over here in the east. In the west, where you will see statues, stone structures on Easter Island with fezzes on. Wide nose, big lips, big forehead, and a fez on. This is a motif that you will see all throughout the world when you really, really study the history that they have been suppressing. The history that they have been suppressing in the Masonic lodges. We know it, we agree. We all agree that Europeans have been suppressing history. Now you got to ask yourself, through what vehicle have they been suppressing history? One of those vehicles is the societies of men that they have established. One is the Order of the Knights, or the Poor Knights of Christ, which is historically known as the Knights Templar, which is now known as your Scottish Rite and York Rite Freemasonry. So what is it that they've been suppressing? What is it that they have been gathering when they've been traveling? They've been gathering ancient degrees of information, and they've been suppressing that same information. We have been giving this information out, and many of our people that have come under various different schools of thought have been rejecting it, thinking that we're another religious organization just coming with another philosophy. And I tell you, brothers, this: you need to research everything that you hear come out of the mouth of somebody who wears a fez. And I'm not saying that everybody that wears a fez is honorable and upright, because there are many robbers that wear the fez. As a matter of fact, there are many robbers and connivers that wear the fez that left a bad taste in my mouth about it. So I can imagine what it leaves in the next man's mouth, because I know and understand how far the COINTELPRO operatives, the Europeans who want to keep your science, your culture, as well as your nationality away from you, I know how far they will go to do that. And they will go as far as appointing someone as a leader and putting the fez on him and saying, look, you run the Moorish Science Temple of America. They will go that far. They will go that far. They have gone that far. So now, as a consequence, we see more science being demonstrated from a Moorish Science Temple of America, and we have a bad taste in our mouth about it. And then some of us will even start demonstrating what we heard some of our so-called black leaders say about the Moors, and saying that we're the ones responsible for the slave trade. Well, if you really know history, since you want to say that and put that out there, this is what I ask you. You answer this question. If the Moors are the ones responsible for enslaving black people, which never existed during the time of the slave trade, right? Ask yourself, who the hell kept them Europeans out of Africa for 800 years straight? What allowed them to even come into Africa? You want to know what allowed them to come into Africa? Do your history, do your research. What allowed them to come into Africa in the first place was when they defeated the Moors' last stronghold in Grenada in Spain. We ruled Spain from 711 AD to 1492. Now, when you look at Europe, over in the West, you had the Moors ruling Spain, which traps off Spain, France, and Germany. So we already had the Mediterranean coast on lock in North Africa. You couldn't just come into North Africa freely, coming from Europe. We made them pay tithes and tribute to come through freely. There's treaties on this. This is not just me talking. There's treaties on this. We had that on lock over there in the West. And then we had our other Moors over there in the East via the Turks. So they could not just freely come into Africa. So now ask yourself, since they came and initiated the slave trade, what allowed them to just freely come into Africa and initiate the slave trade in this vast continent? Vast continent. What allowed them to come in was when they defeated the Moors in 1492. That's when they initiated the slave trade. That's when they financed Columbus's first voyage down to the Americas. We kept their asses out of the motherland. So before you start making these claims saying that the Moors are the ones responsible for the slave trade, number one, we had their asses in servitude first. We showed them how to keep and maintain slaves. Number two, we're the ones who kept their asses up out of Africa for 1,400 years. You name me anybody else who kept them out of Africa for that long. You can't. And the reason why you can't is because 9 times out of 10, you've been taught by somebody who has been initiated as either a Mason or a Shriner under the European Orders of Freemasonry and bound by oath and obligation not to tell you your true history. Take that shit with a grain of salt. That's something that's very well overlooked. It's overlooked every day. For one, when we deal with more science, we dealing with law and government. And many of our people still knocked upside the fucking head about law and government. We still going and casting votes for a damn president that don't have anything to do with your national descent or origin. Because we don't know and understand we don't know and understand the origin of law and government in this land. We've been knocked over the head because we think that CNN is what describes what law and government is. There's documents such as the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Association, and the Articles of Confederation, which prescribe the infrastructure of how law and government is to be set up. None of us study that. None of us read it. None of us look at it. All we do is look at the propaganda on CNN. We look at the propaganda on CNN, and to us, this is what law and government is. Now we go out to the polls and vote as a 14th Amendment citizen. And as a 14th Amendment citizen, this is the same citizenship status that was conferred to the Negro when the Negro got released from servitude. The Negro, after getting released from servitude, didn't have the same status as the white. But you still voting under Negro status, under a granted privilege. And then what form of government are you voting for? Many of us don't know. We just say, I don't like Donald Trump. I'm going to vote for the other guy. It don't matter what the other guy is or whether you're voting for Donald Trump. What form of government are you voting for? That's the question that you should be asking. Because this is where your freedom comes in at. Your freedom comes in at under what form of government you're voting for. And family, they relinquished the constitutional fold of government back in 1861. You need to know that. And when you really truly know that, you won't be pressed to go up there and vote. For one, you know that vote don't mean shit anyway. Don't mean nothing. You can go up there and vote all you want. The agenda is the agenda. Whoever's going to sit in office is going to sit in office. Ain't none of your conditions going to change in your community, in your society. Taxes might go up, they might go down. But how's that going to change any of the conditions in the hood? You're still going to have police officers patrolling all around the hood, shooting and killing anybody whenever they want to, and then getting off. You're still going to have mass incarceration in the hood, your community. You're still going to have a president, as well as a vice president, as well as a cabinet, as well as a judge, as well as a prosecutor. All of these people that are sitting in office that you never voted for. But under a constitutional fold of government, you're supposed to elect these people into office. And they just get appointed. Something you need to wake up and recognize. Aside from understanding who initiated the slave trade. Number one, the slave trade is fabricated. That shit didn't exist as we know it to be. We think that they brought all these Africans over here from Africa on a journey that took 3 months. Come on now. On a boat. A journey that took 3 months on a boat. You transport, let's just say 300 slaves. You transport 300 slaves, that means you got to be able to feed, water 300 slaves as well as the crew for a period of 3 months. Very difficult. You would lose more than half your stock and your crew. Fabricated. Fabricated, fabricated, fabricated. We were already here. The trick they use is denationalization. because they make you think that you only come from over there. And Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaks about this well as well in the seventh degree in the 1 to 14. Where he says, why does the devil call our people Africans? So that our people can think that people from Africa are the only people that they have. Now, if you think that this is where you come from, then you relinquish all your birthrights right here on this land. And it was very key and important that the European taught you that you are somebody other than yourself. Because now you have no rightful claim that you can make in this day and time. In this day and time, you can't make no lawful claim to any portion of land. Talk about I'm a Negro, I'm an African American, or an Indian, or Latino, or Puerto Rican. You can't. The land don't belong to anybody by that name. The European that has that fez on in secret knows exactly who the land belonged to. He know who he took it from. He has his flags. This is not a game. You dealing with a bunch of people who are social engineers. They know and understand who you are. They know your history. They make a killing off of you not knowing your history. And many of us with the feds try to give you that history. Some of you brothers reject it because you've been influenced by brothers who have been working for them. Some that have been working for them and don't know that they've been working for them. They only been taught by somebody who's been working for them that keep demonstrating and promoting this black stuff. Black, white, black, white. You go to Brazil, you're going to see black people, white people. None of them identify themselves as black people, white people, though. Why? You go to Colombia, you're going to see black people, white people. Nobody out there identifies themselves as black people, white people. You go to China, you're going to see black people, white people. Nobody calls themselves yellow, white, or black in China. Why? Why is it that the only place people identify themselves as such is right here in the United States? Let's get to the bottom of it. Francois Bernier. He's a European who came up with the concept of identifying different races based on skin tone, cranial structure, hair texture, and phenotype. Those four constructs was utilized to create the caste system that we use today, known as black, white, yellow, red, and brown. That same system was readopted by Carl von Linnaeus after Francois Bernier, and then after Carl von Linnaeus, Frederick Johann Blumenbach. And that was set the tone for today's caste system of red, black, white, brown, etc. Now, we've been utilizing that for the past 400 years, like as if it's an identity, but it's not. And when you use that, then you make yourself what's in law called non-descendable, meaning there's no land that you can claim descent to. There's no inheritance that you can claim descent to, because you're identifying yourself by something other than what you need to in order to be descendable to something. Now, these are not my words. This is law. This is international law. This is not the white man's law. This is international law and principle. Before a European or a so-called white man ever walked the damn earth. Because many of you brothers would sit there and say, oh, that's law. That's the white man's stuff. We give him too much credit. We give him credit with making slave ships. We give him credit with making slaves. We give him credit with making laws. We give him credit with making governments. We had all these things in place before he walked the earth. Every single one of them. You know what they said on Hidden Colors? On Hidden Colors, they said the only thing that the European created was the patent office, so he can steal all the ideas of the original people. And that's a fact. That's 100%.